I was only 11 years old when all this went down. It was a weekend, and I was scheduled for a sleepover at my friend Emily's house. At that age, it was the biggest thrill ever. I'd been crushed all week by schoolwork, and all I could think about was sleeping over on Friday and having an entire Saturday of fun before heading home that evening. What made the plan even better was that her parents, the Millers, had an unavoidable social event. They trusted us to handle their 2-story house alone for 6 hours. Back then, it felt like a true adventure. No curfew, 6 hours of non-stop games and movies on their huge TV. But my friend Emily had other plans. I arrived at her house in the suburbs of New Haven, Connecticut, around 8 p.m. It was already dark. Her parents waited to give us the critical rundown, emergency contacts, where the food was, and most importantly, to bring their 4-year-old Labrador, Shaggy, inside before a certain time because rain was expected and his kennel was leaky. As soon as they left, we watched some TV, ate, and started playing cards in the living room. That's when Emily got a brilliant idea. "Let's go down to that fenced-off plot near the end of the street," she said. It was a notoriously overgrown, abandoned lot, tall grass, thick bushes, and completely deserted. We brought Shaggy in, grabbed the key, and headed out. It was only about a 10-minute walk from the house. This was the moment we could have turned back, but we were 11 and fearless. We climbed over a section of broken fence and slipped inside. Once in, Emily said, "Let's play a game. We'll sit apart and see who gets scared first." We walked backward from each other until we were just faint silhouettes. About 10 minutes passed. Then I saw Emily suddenly jump up and bolt toward me. She was literally scrambling over rocks and through bushes like someone was chasing her. Her legs were scratched up by thorns. I was about to laugh and say, "Chicken." But before I could, she blurted, "Get up. Shaggy needs to eat." I was confused. Her parents had already set out his food, but her face was paper white. It looked like she'd just seen a ghost. I didn't question it. I climbed back over the fence and we both ran. Emily gripped my hand so tightly I had a bruise for 2 weeks. We ran like our lives depended on it. Back at the house, she frantically started locking the deadbolts on the metal gate, tossing me the house key. "Open the main door." I was panicking. Once inside, Emily rushed to lock every window, every door, and draw the curtains. Shaggy just stared at her, probably thinking, "What in the world is wrong with her?" 10 minutes later, Emily came back to the living room, dead serious. "When we were sitting out there," she whispered, "I saw something in the bushes to your right." She said she initially thought it was an illusion, but then she saw it crawl toward me. It was unaware that she was watching it. "I didn't want to scare you or let it know I saw it," she said, "so I made up the excuse about Shaggy's food." A shiver went down my spine. We never told anyone. Her parents had forbidden us from going out, and we didn't want this to be our last sleepover. We peeked out the window. The street seemed empty. We agreed to forget it and just enjoy the rest of the night. I wish it had ended there, but what happened next is still vivid in my mind, and the fear is just as real today. The layout of Emily's house was a key part of the terror. A concrete wall enclosed the property with just one main gate out front. Inside, there were 3 entrances: the front door, the back door, and a third, an external basement entrance on the side of the house. These cellar-type entries are common in older homes in the Northeast, featuring a metal trap door that locks from the inside. About an hour after the first incident, we were upstairs in Emily's second-floor bedroom, playing games. We'd managed to laugh a little, but the tension was still lurking. Suddenly, Shaggy started barking downstairs. It wasn't his usual bark, it was a deep, guttural growl. Shaggy was a friendly dog who rarely showed aggression. Emily went downstairs to check. She returned shortly. "He's standing by the front door, growling constantly," she said. Confused, we thought maybe a stray cat or dog had wandered onto the porch. We went out onto the small balcony attached to her room, which overlooked the front lawn and the street. We looked down and saw a man standing right in the middle of the lawn. The light was poor, but we could see he wore heavy, dirty clothes. His hair was tangled, matted, and wild. Shaggy, who was now on the balcony with us, was straining to get outside. We ducked down, whispering about what to do, when we heard a sound from downstairs. Clink, rattle, rattle. The front doorknob was shaking. Someone was trying to get in. We crept downstairs and saw the man was now by the window next to the front door, trying to pry it open. Emily grabbed my hand. Her breathing was ragged. "The basement door! I forgot to lock the outside latch." Our faces drained of color. If he got in through the basement, the only thing separating us would be a thin inner basement door with a simple hook latch. Then, we heard sounds of movement from the back, a shaking and rattling of windows. Luckily, the man was preoccupied at the front door, on the opposite side from the basement entrance. Emily looked at me. "You stay in the hallway with Shaggy. Let him go if you need to. I'm going outside to lock the basement." I was terrified, but there was no time to argue. She slipped out the front door and sprinted around the side of the house. I stood in the hallway, clutching the dog's leash, shaking. The only sound in the house was the rattling windows. Clink, rattle, thud, thud. Then, a few agonizing seconds later, Emily's voice yelled, "Click!" The deadbolt was in. She sprinted back and slammed the front door shut, throwing the bolt. Thud, thud, thud. A heavy blow slammed against the door, right where she had been. God only knows what would have happened if Emily hadn't locked that basement door in time. We rushed back upstairs to Emily's room and peeked out the balcony again. The man was still standing in the middle of the lawn, but this time his head was tilted way back, as if he were staring directly up at our balcony. The darkness was too thick for him to see us, because Emily had already turned off all the lights in the room. We froze. We couldn't even breathe. Then the man started to laugh. A slow, cackling, insane laugh. And then he dropped to his hands and knees and began to crawl across the lawn, back and forth, like an animal. He was still laughing. Emily squeezed my hand tighter. Shaggy, standing beside us, tensed up. His tail tucked, and he backed away from the railing. We watched from the balcony. We couldn't make out his features, but his movements, that laugh, that unnatural crawl, were bizarre and inhuman. The only thought was to call the police, but we were just 11. We were too scared of getting in trouble for leaving the house. We had broken the rules, and this was the consequence. The madman crawled and laughed on the lawn for a terrifying 25 to 30 minutes. Then he suddenly stood up. We held our breath, wondering what he would do next. He walked over to Shaggy's old, broken kennel, which was propped against the corner of the wall. He put his foot on it and slowly began to climb up the wall. Then he dropped to the other side and was gone. Even after he left, we stayed on the balcony, too scared to move. Emily checked every few minutes, listening for any sound, but he didn't return. Around 2 a.m., her parents finally got home. When they opened the front door, they paused. The doorknob was covered in mud, and the house was locked up tight. "Why is everything locked?" they asked. "And what's all this mud outside?" Emily quickly replied. "We were playing hide and seek and wanted it to be totally dark." Her parents looked confused but didn't press it. We never told them the truth, and perhaps we never fully understood it ourselves. If that man had gotten inside, if he'd had 30 more seconds at the basement door, I probably wouldn't be telling this story today. Sometimes I wonder if he was just a regular guy or something else. Emily still won't talk about that night, but whenever we do, there's a strange glint in her eyes, as if she saw something that wasn't human and shaggy. He never went near the front yard again after that night. This story actually happened to my friend Harbeck, but I was there that night. What happened is still burned into my memory. The incident took place in a small countryside town in Ohio, a place called Alton, where there wasn't much for young boys to do. No malls, no movie theaters, nowhere to channel our energy. Maybe that's why rebellious kids like us made a habit of getting into trouble to pass the time. I'm not normally a coward, but what happened that night rattled me for a solid month. It was a Friday during math class at school when my friend Jack asked me, "Dude, sleep over this weekend?" I was about to say no. I never really liked sleepovers. But then Jack said something that made me drop all my reservations. "Hey, remember that old abandoned hospital past the woods? Let's go explore it tomorrow night." I was stunned. I'd heard the name of that hospital, even seen it mentioned on a paranormal YouTube channel, Mr. Nightmare's House of Horrors. The hospital was right outside our town, but I never had the guts to go alone. This felt like the perfect chance. I immediately said yes. Jack told me to come over Saturday afternoon, and we'd head out. Back home, I started researching the hospital online. The name was Robertson House. Soon I found more videos of people exploring it. One video claimed it was initially used to treat British soldiers after the South African Boer War, then reopened in 1908 to treat children with tuberculosis, TB. For some odd reason, it was completely shut down in 2001. Ever since, stories of paranormal activity had been circulating online. Children's voices in the hallways, loud banging on the walls. I don't really believe in that stuff, but a knot of dread started forming in my stomach. The next day, Saturday afternoon, I arrived at Jack's house. We quickly ate dinner, trembling with excitement, and then left, telling his mom we were just heading to the town center and wouldn't be long. About 20 minutes later, we reached the woods that led to the hospital. A strange silence fell over us. We could hear the snap of twigs under our feet, but there were no birds, no wind, and no rustling leaves. It felt like the forest had been drained of all life. I was intensely uneasy, but I kept it in check. After a short walk, we came upon the building. It looked exactly like the videos. High brick walls, the base hidden by overgrown bushes, and every window nailed shut with thick wooden boards, except for one that was wide open. The scene was straight out of a horror show, like The Haunting of Hill House. Jack walked ahead of me, sensing my loss of nerve. He pointed to the open window. "Entrance is right there." He went through first and I followed. Inside, it was pitch black. We turned on our phone flashlights and stepped into the hallway. The walls were covered in more graffiti, and above some of the doors hung clumps of spider eggs. Jack joked, pointing at one of the sacks. "Don't pop that, dude. An alien will pop out." I was too scared to even laugh. Further down the hall, we saw a door that was slightly ajar. I shined my flashlight toward it. Jack immediately threw down a challenge. "Hey, you go in there without your phone light on." I refused instantly. "If anyone's going alone, it's you." He laughed, called me a coward, and then headed for the door himself. He opened it all the way, turned off his light, and his silhouette slowly disappeared into the room. I stood outside, gripping my phone tightly. For a second, I thought I should just bolt. But then Jack screamed. The fear in his voice was not a joke. I rushed inside. Jack was standing in the middle of the room, staring at the floor. "What happened?" I asked. When he turned to me, the sheer terror on his face was unmistakable. He pointed down. When I looked, my skin crawled. Right at Jack's feet was a pile of dead birds. Some were dry and old, but others looked distressingly fresh. At that exact moment, a loud thudding came from the ceiling above, like something heavy, maybe a large animal's hooves, hitting the floorboards. We looked at each other, our eyes confirming we had both heard it. Without a word, we sprinted back toward the exit. As I passed the stairwell, Jack stopped. "Dude, I need to look upstairs." "Are you crazy? We both heard that noise. It could be some squatter or something worse." He ignored me and turned toward the stairs. He yelled, "Hello, anyone up there? We won't hurt you." The air felt electric. He took the first step and the stairwell groaned loudly. My anxiety mounted with every step. I yelled, "Don't go alone, man. I'll come with you." He turned and said, "Wait here. If you come, the stairs might break. I'll just check." I said, "Fine. That is a stupid idea. I'm going outside. I'll wait for you there." He nodded and then disappeared from my sight. I quickly squeezed myself back out the window. For a minute, I stood there, wondering if I was doing the right thing by leaving Jack inside. Then I heard pounding footsteps coming from within the building. And then I saw Jack launching himself through the window like a maniac. Before I could even ask, he screamed, "Run! Don't look back!" We took off into the woods for our lives. I have never run so fast. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. The darkness, the shadows of the trees, and the snapping twigs under our feet only amplified the fear. After about half an hour of running, we reached the town center, both of us utterly breathless. I paused to catch my breath and finally asked, "Dude, what did you see up there?" Jack's face was white, his eyes wide with fear. He spoke in a shaky whisper. I got to the top. There was a room straight ahead. A little light was coming from under the door, like someone had lit something inside. I thought that must be where the noise came from. He paused for a moment. Then he continued. I got up the nerve and opened the door. The moment I shined my flashlight into the room, my breath hitched. "What did you see?" I whispered. Jack's eyes were still huge. On the floor was a huge painted pentagram. Candles were lit all around it. The whole room smelled weird, like burning hair and incense mixed together. I felt a cold hand gripping my throat. Jack went on. I was turning to leave when I saw some figures at the end of the hallway. I shined my flashlight over, and there were people standing there. "People?" I almost yelled. "Yes," Jack's voice was now a barely audible whisper. "They were all wearing black robes covered from head to toe. and they were all just staring at me. No one moved. They were just standing there, watching my every move. I was paralyzed. But when one of them took a step forward, I knew it was time to run. A chill ran through my entire body. "Jack, did you see their faces?" I asked. "No, and maybe that's a good thing. Their faces were covered, but their presence, the way they stood, it felt like they weren't human." We stood in silence for a while. Even the air around us seemed too quiet. Jack finally spoke quietly. "I never told anyone. You don't tell anyone either." I just nodded. We never went back to that part of the woods again. For weeks, I couldn't sleep properly. The pile of dead birds, the cold air, and the figures in black robes flashed behind my eyes every time I closed them. Once, out of curiosity, I searched for the Robertson house online again. In an old Reddit thread, someone had written that they saw robed figures there in 2005, performing weird rituals at night. Another person claimed they heard chanting. Some locals even believed the place was occupied by a cult, performing bizarre rituals, perhaps to summon a paranormal force. I don't know who they were or what the pentagram was for. But one thing is certain. That night, something was there that was beyond the human realm. Sometimes curiosity leads people to doors that should have remained shut. Just because we don't understand things doesn't mean we should seek them out. Even now, when I drive down the road that leads to those woods, my eyes automatically turn away. The Robertson house is just a name, but the reality hidden behind it still haunts my nights. And if you're ever in Alton, Ohio, don't make the mistake of going into those woods, because some things truly are still alive in the dark. I was about 10 years old when I got my first sleepover invitation. Let's call my friend Abby. Her house was pretty far from mine in our neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona, so it always felt like a special occasion. Whenever we got together, I'd just barely worked up the courage to spend the night at someone else's house. And since Abby was my oldest friend, this was a sort of test for me. A little background on Abby's family. She was the youngest of 4 siblings. Her oldest brother was about 10 years older than us and had autism. He still lived at home with their parents. He was a little strange, unpredictable, and for a small kid, being around him could be a bit intimidating. You never knew what he might do next. That night, there were 3 of us girls for the slumber party. We decided we would sleep downstairs so we could watch movies. Late into the night, I chose a spot on the couch, right by the wall of windows that faced the backyard. The other 2 girls slept on mattresses on the floor. We put on a DVD, but before the movie was over, everyone was asleep. I'm a notoriously light sleeper when I'm away from home. I constantly wake up. Sometimes I don't sleep at all. That night was no different. About 2 hours in, I woke up. Maybe a sound, maybe just a break in sleep. My eyes opened to the bright light of the TV. I was disoriented at first, but as my eyes adjusted, I looked out the window and my heart leaped. There was a man sitting in the backyard. He was sitting in a deck chair, and he had turned the chair to face directly into the window, right where the 3 of us were sleeping. He was watching us. And the most terrifying part, he was smiling. He probably didn't see that I was awake. He must have thought we were all sleeping soundly, but I was wide awake, frozen in place, just staring at him. It was dark, but not so dark that I couldn't make out his face. It was clearly visible, staring intently at us with a strange, unnerving grin on his lips. It was the smile of someone observing their prey. My entire body was rigid. I lay there for a few minutes, then slowly, I turned my head away and closed my eyes. My breathing was fast. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought he might hear it. I stayed that way for a long time, unmoving. When I finally gathered the courage, I slowly glanced back toward the window. The man was gone. The chair was empty, just gently rocking back and forth. To this day, I have no idea who that was. What was he doing in Abby's backyard in the middle of the night? And why was he watching us? Sometimes I wonder if it was Abby's older brother. But no, that man had dark hair and deep-set eyes. Abby's brother looked completely different with light hair and blue eyes. So, who was he? Why did he come? Was it just to watch, or did he intend to do something worse? Thankfully, we were all safe by morning. But after that night, I never spent the night at Abby's house again. Sometimes the terror isn't in a scary room. It's just sitting one window away and it's smiling.